What are the best situations for quarterbacks over the next 3 years? That and more this week on the Football Guys Dynasty Show. And Jordan, lots of criteria to consider, but we're looking for the most stable environment. Could include coaching, skill position weapons, contract situations. Let's get started talking about some of these best situations independent of the quarterback around the NFL.
Yeah, it was fun. I was thinking about this a lot, and I was like, I got to text. This is the idea for the week, and so spent some time on the bike even thinking about this. So I really had like 3 big things in terms of what I looked at. I wanted to know supporting cast, right? And I broke that really down into 2 different things. So supporting cast being pass catchers, right? Skill position guys, right? Pass catchers, wide receivers, tight ends, running backs. Factored in some age there and the quality of those guys as well. That's number 1. Number 2 that I thought about was offensive line, right? The quality of the offensive line is a big deal. Thought about that. And then number 3 was really the coach. So different situations, I think you weigh differently, right? I don't think it's all, I put 38% on this and 26% on this or anything like that. But I think you have to sort of view it in the bigger picture. And I use really those combinations to look at where we are going forward.
Yeah, a couple of things I would add that I looked at, some contract situations, also career arcs. If you're buying into a wide receiver that's maybe 30 years old as the cornerstone player for that depth chart, and maybe there's not a lot of other reasons to buy in, then maybe that's one that would move down your board or not even be considered. And I thought it was an interesting exercise because some of these situations for me have quarterbacks already in them that I trust. And that's a dynasty takeaway here for player value, feeling good about an early investment in those kind of startups or team build situations. And then other ones, maybe there's a quarterback change in the works over the next 12 months or 24 months by some form or fashion. So kick us off and give us some of your defense. I know you're used to dealing with court proceedings here. So build your case for the first team you'd like to mention here.
All right. So I have basically a top 4. And then the 5th one was really hard. But the first one I'll go with is Cincinnati. Because you've got Chase, you've got Higgins, Boyd's contract's really good as well. And then you have Mixon, I think, in a reasonable deal.
If they ever figure out tight end, they're in trouble, right? I mean, they brought in Hayden Hurst, and I mean, they've been kind of patching things together, but imagine if they fix it with a top 6 to 8 guy.
Totally. And so, but yeah, I mean, just that core, I have some questions about play calling and stuff like that, but I'm not going to nitpick. They've got like the broad strokes sort of,
2 rookie deals for the next 2 years. They're kind of locked in. They have they could also obviously keep Higgins and not, give him some big deal, but Chase now locked in for 3 more cheap years. Yeah.
Right.
A lot of play.
Yeah. So it's the finances are really good, and it'll be interesting to see when all those guys come due. They're going to come due at the same time, right? Burrow and then Chase and Higgins will come due in short order. But it's funny. I think
it's conceivable that they keep all 3. I mean, I think they could view them as like a triad, and these are the cornerstones, especially if they're still not paying up at tight end or maybe 3 or 4 other spots.
Totally. And, don't pay up at running back, right? But it'll be interesting as those guys go. We've had a hard time getting wide receivers and quarterbacks on big deals on the same team, right? And I think that's a financial aspect to this. So you wonder if
the Chiefs just passed on that.
Correct. The Chiefs
I mean, they had that, and they're like, how long can we stay in this environment?
Totally. And so you wonder with guys like with Buffalo and like Diggs and Allen, those are like the 2 guys that are really
how long will that coexist?
Yeah. Right. And see how sort of that team construct goes.
Yeah, good one with the Bengals. They made my list for sure. Here's one that without quarterback. Well, right now I view it as without quarterback, pending future results. And I think this is one where there's a lot of positives. It's the Philadelphia Eagles. Offensive line situation, but they just locked in A.J. Brown, obviously top or near the top of the market. It changes daily. So Terry McLaurin's still looking up, I believe, but there's someone that's going to pass A.J. Brown shortly, I'm sure. But you offset that with Devonta Smith on a rookie deal. Dallas Goedert is locked in. They also are in a decent cap situation. I think the Eagles, especially if Jalen Hurts doesn't work out, it's one of the more interesting spots for a quarterback to land and to vault up beyond maybe what their own lid lifting abilities are, just because the situation itself is so fertile for fantasy production and being locked in with those good weapons, the offensive line, the cap situation to build around, depending on how much they pay for a quarterback or if they draft a high end guy next offseason. But to me, this season on into next year, and heck, this could be a Gardner Minshew watch situation as well in season. So I just think it's super interesting quarterback wise because everything around it looks so positive and inviting and frankly facilitating to good results.
Yeah, they were my number 2. So that was, I'm with you there. You told me, you tipped this to me in advance. So I'm going to try and get out in front of this because I have a surprise. You also told me you have a surprise, and I think we might have the same surprise. My third team is going to be the Detroit Lions. Did I pick your surprise team?
No, not even on my list.
All right.
Pitch this thing. It's Amon-Ra St. Brown centric. I want to hear it.
I'm all in on Amon-Ra St. Brown. But you got Amon-Ra St. Brown. You have Jameson Williams on a rookie deal. You've got Hawkinson and you've got DeAndre Swift. Right. Yep. So you've got good pieces. I think all around at all the positions, and they're young. And you have bookend tackles that are first year guys. You have another first rounder at center on your offensive line. And I think we could look back in this and again, we'll see with Goff, right? And I'm interested with Goff to see the situation is, I think, sneaky good. And if he plays competently, they're going to find themselves in an interesting spot, and he could actually play himself into some longevity in a sneaky good spot if they're good this year, which I think that they have an ability to definitely go over their win total on the season. So but if they sort of flame out, like this could be a situation where you get a rookie quarterback that goes to the top of the draft that all of a sudden really has a ton of buzz next year because of all these pieces. But I like Detroit a lot as a landing spot for a quarterback.
Yeah. And picture it again later in the season, Jameson Williams playing. You've got Hawkinson, who hasn't really peaked. I don't think as a receiver, DeAndre Swift has really peaked. So there's a lot of reasons for optimism just within what they already have, independent, like you said, of elevated quarterback play or shifting to 2023 or anything like that. I'll save my sneaky one for the end. I'm going to go with the Chargers, the next one. Trust the coach, trust the system in place. Eckler's locked in. Keenan Allen, yes, on the older side, locked in. They just brought back Mike Williams. We'll see about Josh Palmer. Day two wide receivers are very tricky, but those three elements make you pretty insulated when you got the big wide receiver. You've got the guy that could win inside of 15 yards for days in Keenan Allen and just keep converting sticks. And then you got Austin Eckler, who can win one-on-one and just make you right, even on 3rd and 12 when the defense did everything right. And he's 27. So I still think you have a window here. It may not be ideal. I basically wrote that there are multiple seasons. So by the end of that 3rd year, you might be like, Chargers fading off of this list. But I think for now, and especially if you wait year 1 a little more than 3, 2 more than 3, I think you're still dealing with a top 5.
Yeah, that was really the longevity factor of that, and the lacking of tight end was the one that I sort of bumped up against on this one, and
Jared
had a little
Cook
bit
didn't work out. Gerald Everett, you figure they could have done maybe a little better than that.
Right, and it's interesting because this was a team that was actually in consideration to draft a wide receiver by all accounts, and if Jameson Williams was their guy, or whoever, if they
had a 3rd wide receiver that we felt better about than a Josh Palmer, who's really not on the success track post year 1.
Right. And you have a good offensive line. Like, I don't think that's any, that is to me, honestly, a good consideration in this, given the fact that they've got Rashawn Slater, they took Zion Johnson as well. So you have good young tackles as well. Like this,
unfortunately, no discount. Justin Herbert, top 102, 103 in Superflex draft. No soup for you. You gotta be up there, and sometimes you gotta draft them ahead of Patrick Mahomes to get them.
I got to 103 this week and took them. So, draft,
to me, it's like the auto pick at 103.
Oh yeah, it's easy.
I know who I'm getting. Yeah, I'm getting Mahomes or I'm getting Herbert.
Right,
not
exactly.
Bad living.
Not living clean. All right, this is my last one. So we disagreed on anyone. You didn't have Detroit in.
I didn't have Detroit, but that was your super sneaky one. You wanted to circumvent that just in case I had them. Yeah.
That was the reason why I actually
You're playing
did.
Guess Who.
I wanted to do
is he
this
wearing
game
glasses?
because
Is he bald? Is he wearing a hat?
I wanted to do this because I was like, I want to talk about Detroit's offense. All right, my next one is the Rams, and this one's super simple.
Yeah.
Sean McVay. And this offense has shown the ability to make it work. This offense is they've circled a lot of people in, right? It's been different people at running back. It's been different people at wide receiver too. That Cooper Kupp has been a pretty consistent mainstay since McVay has been there, but largely everything else has gone around that.
Cooper Kupp and McVay will make you right a lot.
Yes. That's the right answer a lot of times. And so yeah, I mean, just
ask the Bengals, right?
Right? The two of those guys, and almost no matter what happens, is if it's no matter what type of situation is, they can sort of, and we saw it, they force-fed Cooper Kupp and it worked, right? So I think this one, and you have a front office that's aggressive, right? I think that matters, right? And as well, in particular in this situation, they've proven it, right? So they're taking shots on guys like Allen Robinson and keep doubling down and kind of being aggressive in terms of supplementing the talent that they have. I really like this spot for a quarterback. Stafford.
Is Allen Robinson one of the more interesting profile situation, options this year, because he's coming off of some down, just off the radar, like Juju Smith-Schuster type stuff. And now he's getting just shot into the veins of the Rams offense. Am I nuts to think that you could have Kupp and Robinson both like top 12, top 15, that it just gets consolidated to such a point with Stafford, McVay in the cauldron, just coming up with ways. And they're like, Allen Robinson, you are not done yet.
Yeah. And like, I like Higbee, but he hasn't set the world ablaze. No. Right. And
he's closer to just a guy.
Right. I like Akers, but they don't really run their offense through the receiving game. And all of a sudden, like you look at that and you're like, like there's a lot of pie for Robinson to eat. I actually went back too. And so Stafford had the big season this year, top 8 finisher. Goff in his years with
his
McVay,
peak season was even higher, right?
Quarterback 9, 6, 14, 16. So
yeah, for a guy that people think now can't play,
right,
and who was considered a year one bust, get that guy off the field. Goff year 1 to year 2 is one of the more astounding, upticks.
Yes,
totally. that we've seen, and that's one of the whole things of like, well, you might want to give one-on-ones a chance because all of a sudden you give them a year in the NFL, and again, a perfect storm for Goff for sure. But they made my list. Kupp, Robinson locked in. The McVay factor, I mean, cannot be understated there. My last one that I had locked and loaded in the top 5 is the 49ers. Shanahan system, highly friendly. You get that run game. Just ask Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, how much money is he going to make in his career because of Kyle Shanahan and that friendly system? Make easy throws, define the reads, declare the defense. You have George Kittle locked in. I think a lot of people would say he has more upside than we've seen. That I think he finished at tight end 1 year, but he's a guy that athletically, difference making wise, I mean, kind of since Gronkowski, we really haven't seen a guy. I think he moves better than Gronkowski, but just in terms of like, that's a unicorn right there. Like, tight ends aren't supposed to move like that. And we saw, I just go back to, there was that playoff game, right? The Kittle had like 180 yards and he was just uncheckable and, just willing the team to either a close loss or a win. And so Kittle is locked in. Brandon Ayuk, regardless of what you think he ultimately ends up being, he's a good NFL receiver. And you could say Deebo Samuel is better, but Ayuk still has 3 more years locked in. You have Deebo Samuel, 1 more year, question mark. I mean, again, I think they would be a little foolish to let him go, but you never know how discussions and contracts and holdouts and intents and all those things go. So could he be on the move? Yes. But right now, under contract, and he could be with the team for the rest of his prime. But when you say Deebo Samuel creating on his own, Shanahan creating easy yards in general, Kittle, uncheckable, Brandon Ayuk could be a team's wide receiver 1. That is a pretty good situation, supporting cast there, and environment to foster quarterback production from the guy.
Yeah, I had them on my list of guys that were right around 5. And the Deebo thing was a factor, right? That was a big, the lack of clarity on him mattered to me in that context. I think my 5th one is is the Chargers. I will go down have you named all of your guys in terms of your top?
Well, I just have the one wild card. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead with your wild card because I
All
have
right,
some,
here we
I have
go.
some leftover ones. I have a guess. Can
this
I
is
guess?
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, one guess.
So if you're going wild card,
this is probably going to seem the Jets. That's not a bad one. That's not a bad one, right? All the capital they put in, yeah. Right. Nope. I'm going to go. This is complete YOLO. Like you said, Detroit. Like really think about this. Really listen to me, Chad. That's what you said with Detroit. So I'm going to tell you, this hinges on three things actually. But again, I think it's tough to build around things as good as this could be. Atlanta Falcons.
Okay.
I'm going to sell you a little bit. So
I'm here for this.
Pitts.
I'm here for this.
So let's picture Kyle Pitts as an uncheckable force. We saw signs of that last year and under contractual control for 4 more years on the relative cheap to the market. Wide receiver money, tight end money, whatever. Going into the 20s. Kyle Pitts, offensive playmaker. You have Drake London. 5 years of control. Let's say he's Mike Evans minus. Let's say he's Marquez Colston or Marquez Colston plus. Whatever little prism you want to put on it. You've got 9 years of control for a 21 and 22-year-old that at 6'4", 6'5 plus, movement for both of them. I mean, these could be centerpiece elements NFL-wise very quickly. Pitts is on that path. London hasn't played. I get all that. They've got tons of cap room. They could do almost whatever they want. This is a blank space type team, but yet you say they've spent big capital-wise on tight end wide receiver combo, and then a guy that 6'5", 215, 220 can move, can catch, doesn't grow on trees. So you have 2 guys like that, a ton of cap space to do whatever you want, blank slate. So I think Atlanta, like your Detroit, a sneaky spot that we maybe and you know what? Atlanta could absolutely for next year be looking dead red at a quarterback that just gets dropped into a team that has a high pick, has a ton of cap space, and these 2 guys.
Yeah, no, I like it. I didn't put them on the list because of the concerns. We just haven't seen it with London yet, and the whiff rate can be high on those guys.
Making this list in January, they might easily 100%. Be included, or London has an injury, doesn't look the part, whatever. All of a sudden, neither one of us are really considering.
Right, and that I think that goes the same with my other sort of wild card. My YOLO guess that I thought could have been on your list, which was the Jets, because you look at this team and you could all of a sudden have they have some of the tight end concerns as well, but like we talked about with Cincinnati, interestingly, because Uzoma jumped from one team to the next, and we like Conklin as well. But you have Hall, you've got Carter, right? You've got Corey Davis and Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson. Like all of a sudden you could look at that and be like, they've done some stuff with their offensive line as well. So I do think like what this list might look like come, next February, if we do this exercise again,
this would be interesting. Yeah.
Atlanta and the Jets could definitely be teams on there. I also included Miami there. But some of the stuff with like the lack of certainty with Gesicki, for example, I think that matters a little bit as well.
Yeah. And I was thinking, we get to January and how does that shift based on how some of these rookies look? Mm-hmm. All right. Chad Parsons, Jordan McNamara, episode 109 of the Football Guys Dynasty Show. I want to remind you about the Football Guys official gear and merch. Classic Black Eyed Joe logo, quality designs and materials. You got hats, shirts, outerwear, coffee mugs. We're adding stuff all the time at shop.footballguys.com. We'll also want to remind you to rate and review us on your podcasting platforms. We're out on our own. We're stretching our wings. And all the Football Guys shows in the family of podcasts are doing exactly that. So if you're listening to this show, you haven't given us a review as well as a rating, please do so. It helps all the algorithmic overlords. Let's get to some dynasty trading of the week. We got Lamar Jackson and Superflex on the move for a big package. So is he a cornerstone player? Should you be open to selling? There were some mixed opinions in the Shark Pool. If you want to go and send your trades to be included in the show, just go to that completed Dynasty Trades forum and forum post, and that's where you get it. It's a long, long list. It goes back years and years. Tons of great discussion points that you're going to hear on this show. Lamar Jackson for Davis Mills, Tyler Lockett, a 22 first and a 23 first. So pre-rookie draft this year, and I didn't get to see indications on where those picks are projected or are.
Doesn't matter. Give me Lamar.
Oh, okay.
Right? I mean, I don't like this could be I mean, if this is Breece Hall, we put him in there, I'm still taking Lamar, right?
Okay.
That would be sort of my angle on this. We are in a very healthy debate about the Baltimore offense internally as well. There was some good discussion going on in the Mark Andrews thread. I was getting eye pain on, and I was coming ready for battle to defend the honor of Mark Andrews.
Obviously Mark Andrews overrated. We had a dichotomy there in the in the Football Guys staff chat over the past few days, and that was a quizzical one. Like I was just like overrated. I was like, I'm surprised everyone didn't put him as overrated. I was like, huh, okay.
Right. Well, Mahomes was one too, and I was like, oh God. I was like, I gotta make sure I'm not associated with him.
Not everybody in the top 1, 2, 3 of the position is automatically overrated.
Yeah, well, and the thing with Lamar is I've got super, super geeky over the past couple of days, as I'm known to do. And I actually was looking at some of the passing rate stuff and some of that stuff. When I like to look at some schematic changes, right? When you look at offenses and you look at teams that change what they do a lot. And so one of the things you can do is look at early down pass rate. And that's a really good indicator of whether a team's being aggressive throwing or not, right? One of the things that I think has gotten confused or clouded or, is dominating the discussion in a way that I don't necessarily think is fair to anyone in Baltimore. The response to why, I put this out on Twitter today, actually, why do we expect Baltimore to go back to running the ball a ton? Well, when you actually look at what they did last year, a lot of people say, hey, their team stunk, right? Their running backs were hurt. Their defense was bad, so they were in shootouts. I think the easiest way to evaluate whether or not that is true, specifically with the defense stuff, is to just look at early game stuff, games relatively close, early downs, right? Because that's your neutral game script stuff, all that stuff. And you see this, this tells you kind of who you are, right? This tells you who you are in terms of your team. In 2019, they ranked 32nd in terms of early down passing rate, right? The most run heavy team on early downs. In 2020, they ranked 20th. In 2021, 12th. And that's the type of indication to me that's like, I look at and I was like, I flinched and I was like, wow, wait, let me go back and rerun these numbers.
They were
and then,
DFL.
And is there something here that is changing, right? I think if you're looking at, and you actually can go through and look at some of the success stuff as well, like when you go and actually look at how successful they have been in terms of some of your, in terms of like your drop back success rate and those sorts of the passing game metrics on how good they were. Like they were up in terms of the EPA per drop back. They were, ninth last year, 8th or 9th in terms of, they were 8th in terms of EPA per drop back. So expected points added, right? We're getting a little geeky here, but I think that the overall takeaway is when you look at this team, this is a team that by their stats had not thrown the ball enough. They had overperformed in terms of their production, dropping back to pass throughout Lamar Jackson's career. And last year was the first year that they actually embraced it. And that to me is, I know they traded Marquise Brown, but it's funny because in one hand, everyone says Marquise Brown sucks. And then on the other breath, everyone says that
such a big loss,
that it's such a big loss. Well, you got to kind of pick one, right?
Are you happy your ex left or not?
Right.
Like which do you want?
Right.
You want her still here? Or?
Right. Are you lonely? Like, what are we talking about here? But this is really the first time that their production and their decision making has matched the Lamar Jackson based passing production. And I find that super, super interesting and super compelling, especially when you look at a guy like Mark Andrews. For the purpose of this discussion, it almost doesn't matter about it because either way, right, if they go back to running the ball more, like this offense is going to have to be super Lamar Jackson centric. So that makes this trade easy. But I did want to talk about while we were here, talk about some of the Baltimore stuff, because I think it's very easy to look at that and just say, oh, these three things happened. I don't think like Baltimore is really smart. And if you were to like start with the list of, if instead of this discussion we had supporting cast, if we just said pick the smartest franchises, like that,
they're always in the top 5.
Right. That conversation's probably got them in the top 2 to 3, right? And that's a floor situation. If they're right, if they're changing, right, if they're moving towards where they are more efficient, we know that throwing the ball is more efficient, right? Do we really think that the team that's as smart, if not smarter than anyone else, is really going to go the opposite direction?
Right? And Lamar Jackson dropping back should scare teams,
right?
Because now he's in the open, he's in the wild,
right?
He can carve you. You have to have eyes on him. Like it's a real thing. You can't play man to man and just turn your back. Be like things will be okay. It won't be okay.
It's not gonna be okay.
And he doesn't run for 7. Like he doesn't run for 7 like Mac Jones. Just to the sticks and out. No,
right.
he's taking it to the house if he can.
Right. And so that's the big thing with this team specifically. I'm super interested in terms of how this is all going to work out. But I think that we write off them as a passing game to our own peril. And just the fact that they moved on from then there's other ways to fix it, right? Maybe there's a breakout. We don't know. Like there's a lot of and honestly, like there doesn't need to be a huge wide receiver 2 for a team to be a really successful passing offense. Like we've seen this out of Kansas City, right? I'm not going to put Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes in the same breath, but we've seen this with other guys like Cam Newton, right? Like without true good wide receiver 1s, like they've got everything that they need in Andrews. So I just wanted to pitch them because I find that they're
like with Greg Olsen.
Disrespected.
I remember some of those Cam Newton teams. It was Greg Olsen and a hodgepodge of wide receivers.
Correct.
But yeah, the thing that bothers me about this deal is Davis Mills or Tyler Lockett have to be better to do this deal. Like I really shoulder shrugged about the players. 2 firsts, yeah, that sounds great. That's eye candy. But still, if you're trying to replicate a quarterback that can do what Lamar Jackson is and can win you a year and can win you a week and put up 50, not every quarterback can do that. There's a select group that can do that with any sense of regularity or probability. And so Davis Mills, is he ever going to be anywhere in that remote neighborhood, zip code, area code, state, time zone? No. Tyler Lockett, he's eroding as much as we like the guy. He's eroding, and he might finish outside the top 40 or 50 this year. Very real possibilities. So you've got to get this isn't going Lamar Jackson to Matthew Stafford or, just someone still in the top 15 that you really like as a core quarterback. No, you're falling off the face of the planet, and you hope, like you just said, you hope that's Breece Hall or something high this year, and then you're going to take a shot on Bryce Young or CJ Stroud or insert hopefully a good quarterback class and hopefully a good quarterback prospect or another player falls to you, but you're still out in the woods at quarterback. Still out in the woods. Be careful being in the woods. Lamar, I don't care if you have Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. You have a chance to crush people, and you're basically saying, not for me.
Right.
Not for me. So even if you have another strong quarterback, you have a chance to crush people, and you're saying, I'm going to try to get cute and be better across the board, more well-rounded. I need to get future picks. Try to do it a different way. I don't know.
No. Elite players win. By the way, I went and actually, while you were talking, I just ran the numbers quick on EPA per dropback, my early down metric. It's in the last 3 years, the Baltimore Ravens rank 3rd, 10th, and 8th in early down passing. By the way, give me some of the supporting cast in that offense.
And that includes a couple of quote unquote down years by Lamar Jackson.
Correct. Right. I mean, it's
low volume. He's getting low volume. He's getting early career Cam Newton or what Ben Roethlisberger had super low volume. Russell Wilson. Right. Yeah, Russell Wilson, probably a good example. Yeah.
This is the situation that they have finally sort of reacted.
Get him dropping back more.
Correct.
Sorry, J.K. Dobbins. Get him dropping back more.
Right.
Now overrated list. Ja'Kalen Dobbins. There's one right there. All right. I looked that up. It is Ja'Kalen. All right. One quarterback. 23 first, projected on the later side, and 210 for Tyreek Hill.
I have the list here. So later and
is this how you would spend your contending 23 first? Right now, this summer on Tyreek Hill?
So I think the answer to the question is no, for a couple of reasons. In one quarterback, you could pitch me on this. In this, like, I think you have enough uncertainty that I'm not sure that it gets super more expensive than this. Is the interesting part, right? You're kind of right. You have all this uncertainty, and then the question is like, if he's not a top 6 guy or something like that, can you replicate it for cheaper? Right? Is Mike Evans cheaper? Right? Like, that would be the question that I would ask about this type of deal.
Or how many other options do you have to do something like this in around Halloween?
Correct. Right.
And did you lose anything? Are you really one game weaker in the standings because you didn't do this?
Probably.
We talk about timing all the time,
right.
Trading the future picks. And did you get enough to make the timing of the deal worth it? And to lock in, this is how you spent your pick. That's how you spent your pick. But yeah, Tyreek Hill, I'm fascinated to see Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, what happens. Mm-hmm. Does Tua support that? Is there a clear loser? And then how much does the clear loser cost? Because I still like the profile. So how cheap does it get? That's one of the things I'm watching there. Allen Robinson, we mentioned earlier in the show, that's one. And then the passing game, does Tua vault up because he's got 2 great weapons, Mike Gesicki as well? Or does Tyreek Hill finish at wide receiver 17, Waddle's at 22? It's like both are affordable. Does Waddle go to wide receiver 36 because Tyreek Hill is Tyreek Hill? Interesting stuff. All right, we got last one here. Short rosters, 1 quarterback. Joe Mixon, George Kittle, traded for Kyle Pitts and 23 first and second.
So the short rosters, I do think matters, right? So when you can park a first, this is a strategic matter. When you can park a first on your bench and think about that as as a future asset, or it's not even your bench, it's really just your asset list, right? When you can do that and not have to put a name to that in a short roster situation, that really matters. It's something that you and I have really cycled through in our FFPC league, right? We've said, hey, we've got players that are kind of in the fringe. Let's kick it out a year. Hope we can sort of get a top 3 pick, almost like you're trying to hit the basketball ladder, right? You try and do that with those picks. And so I do think in this, it is a viable strategy to really be aggressive in terms of the future picks, because you can add in and they can add in and help you relatively quickly. So that's just the one thing that I would think about there. I think Pitts is probably better than Kittle. Especially in terms of market value, you could tell me that Kittle outscores Pitts in the next year or so, but I think it's probably closer than the Andrews Pitts debate would be. So I'd take Pitts over Kittle if I was starting up. And then Mixon in the first and the second. I mean, can you do Connor for less? Can you do, Fournette for less, right? Could you trade one of those picks and just pocket a second for one of those 2 guys, right? Could you trade a first for Fournette and pocket that second and sort of take that as a spread on this deal? I think you could, and that's probably that gives me the indication that the right side is the Pitt side.
Yeah, one thing that I was looking up about Joe Mixon, which I thought was interesting. Obviously, he had a career year, based on his lower ceiling standards that he has set. 26. This is probably the peak kind of time, left of what he's worth, and they haven't been a high leverage opportunity team at running back. And that's been part of the problem. Joe Mixon not being a big play creator on his own, really. So he needs high quality targets and or goal line looks. They've been in that high leverage opportunity 26th in 19, 21, and 25th last year. So amidst Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, it was not really set up for success. Joe Mixon got super volume, and he was on an overall good offense, but it was not specifically built upon goal line looks and targets. So I just wonder, Joe Mixon, does he hold up to that big volume for a second straight season? He's at a tenuous age at 26. And even if you view this as Pitts for Kittle is relatively close, I think you have to bank that first and second to stay flexible and say Mixon probably not going to be as impactful this year as he was a year ago. I think there's a lot of forces at play to say this is not a situation set up for him to have just easy production. Like, this isn't the Chargers. This isn't Tampa Bay or the Colts were a high leverage opportunity offense for the running back position historically and last year. And so you're fighting against inertia here that the Bengals haven't been this way the whole Joe Burrow era before that. And Joe Mixon has been on the team the entire time with better quarterback play, worse quarterback play, something in the middle. And so what's going to change? And now you have an back half, back nine of the productive window here for running back. And I think I know Mixon would be a guy you plug and play probably in this type of format, but I think you bank the picks. And like you said, you can always address running back. It's but short rosters mean you have a ton of looks at backup running backs to stream as early as September. So as early as August, who knows? A Cam Akers Dobbins type injury situation occurring again in 2022 could create an opportunity July or August. So I think that Joe Mixon, not to go on a diatribe like you did with Lamar Jackson in Baltimore, but I think Joe Mixon, the more I've looked at it, the more there's a lot of reasons that he's elevating, and I think he's kind of elevating in his career at the wrong time by the market. So I think he's definitely one that don't be surprised if he finishes outside running back 10 or so, and don't be surprised if you look back and you're like, he didn't help that much, and I definitely could have reset the clock within the position or to rookie picks like here.
Yeah, totally with you.
And you're banking picks. Again, short rosters. You want
Stuff
Kittle,
matters.
You want Pitts, but you want to just have one tight end. I just want to make one more point that short roster, one quarterback. You want to have two total quarterbacks and tight ends ideally on your roster. All right, we got some quotes from the Football Guys Dynasty Forum this week. First one up. I'm not a Laviska Shenault guy. The team invested so much in wide receiver this year. I don't think Jacksonville that they are Shenault guys either.
I agree, and could have written the quote. Just
kind of.
Yeah. Definitely not JSM. Is that the username there? Right,
is he interesting for the cost, or are you just completely he's ancillary wide receiver and moving on? Is it that basic?
He's a roster clogger, isn't he? Didn't we talk kind of?
Well, if you already have him, well, you're not roster clogger, yes. So untradeable, but also uncuttable. Existing league, is that?
They brought in Zay Jones. They brought in Marvin Jones. That they brought in Christian Kirk, right? He's on old scholarship in terms of he might have even predated the Urban Meyer. He must have, because Urban Meyer was only there for a handful of games, pun intended. You kind of know at this point whether or not someone's going to have done it.
If you have Shenault, here's going to be the interesting thing. So the investment point. So let's say you drafted him in a startup, rookie draft, whatever. And this is the interesting year because if you get to a few weeks into the season, it's not looking like it. Mm-hmm. So his cost is something that might prevent you from moving on. Say 28-man roster. You shopping for a third? Is someone buying for that? And, third to second, third plus something else, backup running back, something that offers you more options in season. Because if you drop him, someone will pick him up. Mm-hmm. That will occur. Maybe not that week, but at some point during the season, someone will stash him for the offseason.
Right.
He's probably more appealing. If he doesn't work out, he's more appealing in December waiver wire, stashing for January plus than he is October. Boy, he's just burning me with a spot.
Yeah. He's basically he's a dead roster spot, essentially. I'm just looking through my trade database here, and I've got
what's he going for?
I have 7,000 dynasty leagues in there, and he's been traded 6 or 7 times since the NFL draft. So that gives you an idea. There's not a ton of liquidity there. Laviska Shenault and 502 for Tyler Boyd. Laviska Shenault and Devin Bush for Adam Thielen and IDP. A third. A third and Devontae Parker. Right.
Okay. So if he's already a third, if he's already a third or third plus, that means if things don't go right, part way through the season, he could be dropped. Yeah. That's what that means.
Right.
He's already on that.
There's no market either, right? That's a super low number of trades.
Acquired taste is being kind.
Correct.
And again, they just paid Christian Kirk. Like, we shouldn't be surprised if Christian Kirk gets 140 targets, right?
Like, it's more likely that he gets cut than he's a fantasy starter. Right.
Right.
I mean, that's what you're dealing with at this point in his career.
Yep. I believe T. Higgins, even as the wide receiver 2 on his own team, unpack this as you will, Jordan, is worth more than Antonio Gibson, whose value is tanking.
So I'm going to agree with the outcome. There's a lot of stuff in there, right? I'm not entirely sure that he's the number 2 on his team.
What's the outcome?
I would take Higgins over Gibson.
Yeah. Well, one thing I've said, just to infuse this, I've said before that Antonio Gibson, the most success you will have trying to trade him as a falling knife-ish kind of feel, whether or not that actually occurs, but that's the feel of him. Since they drafted Brian Robinson and McKissick coming back, that's a big one. Boy, couldn't Buffalo just keep him in town? My goodness. Nope. Anyway,
we did the smart thing. We traded down and then picked a running back.
But I do think your best chance is going Gibson to a wide receiver you view as a core level wide receiver. I think going running back to wide receiver is your best chance.
It's a good call. That's a really good call. I like
so
that.
Higgins wide receiver 2. Clear cut.
I like this kind of feels like Jamar Chase is really good. This kind of feels a little bit like when everyone just sort of bookmarked DK Metcalf to be the wide receiver 1 in Seattle. When you had like Lockett and it was like, I'm not like he's pretty good. Like,
didn't Lockett go for like 110 catches that next year? Just peppered. Deep threat Tyler Lockett was suddenly running 10 yards and in a ton and getting peppered.
Right. And they've actually finished like I was actually looking this up for a research project recently, and it was like they had finished like neck and neck. Like the only time Metcalf has really beat him was like by a couple of points, like by one spot. I think it might have been 2020, something like that. But yeah, it's like that combination, they were really good. And the takeaway was that the second guy was really good, is I think still really good, and is undervalued because he was clouded out by the number 1 guy. I think that's a savvy play. And especially like if you want to bet on Burrow, I think the bet on Burrow is to take Higgins. It's not to bet on Burrow at 104 because there's a lot of risk there. You have a lot of outs.
Well, Jamar Chase is going a pick or 2 later sometimes. So, So yeah, T. Higgins much more affordable. And T. Higgins, to be fair, if part of the market views him as the wide receiver 2 on his own team, and that's some big detriment, then he's pretty pricey. Considering that fact, that a decent cross section thinks that, because locked in, I'm thinking like Roddy and Julio. I'm thinking we had Miles Austin and Des Bryant. I think the Cowboys had 3 guys in a single season finish in the top 24 at wide receiver, like a rare year. But we've had iterations where 2 in the top 12, and this feels, again, look at tight end, not a lot going on. You say not throwing the ball to Joe Mixon. I mean, there's a pathway to the next 2-3 years. It's like, oh yeah, these 2 guys seeing a ton of targets, different types of targets, and things are working well. Batman and Robin and Batman. It all works out. So yeah, I'm not too worried about that. I think you got to buy the player, buy the situation, and say it's not like they have a stud tight end and other accessories on this depth chart currently. All right, last one here. I'm in the camp of trading guys like Dalvin Cook, Nick Chubb, etc. At this stage. They're a year or an injury away from Ezekiel Elliott, Derrick Henry, where you're lucky to get even a late first. Look at guys like DeAndre Hopkins, Julio Jones. You end up with nothing if you wait too long before exiting.
I don't know. I have a whole stack of jewelry we can pull out here of things that I got from waiting with them, right? Like we won a lot using those guys along the way.
Zeke
right?
is worthless now, Jordan, and you should have sold last year.
Yeah. That's I actually think the better time to sell is in season, because you can get, like, if you're afraid of them, sell Zeke if like there'll be a running back injury. Sell Zeke then, right? Sell those guys then. It's funny. I'm actually in the middle of a startup draft. I was telling you about it. I went and I traded up twice for Herbert and then for Stafford. I got inside the line. It was a crazy set of circumstances. And then I pulled a Chad and didn't draft again until 607. But long story short, I took Alvin Kamara And by the way, I have 3 future first-round picks. I took Alvin Kamara at running back 22, and then paired him with actually Keenan Allen at wide receiver 28. Added Connor and Jacobs in there at running back 24 and 27. Hopkins at 39. So I'm actually building a contending team this year.
Well, they just give it to you in the mid and later rounds. Yeah,
it's crazy.
Take Zeke in round 7. Yeah, they're like, oh, take Mike Evans at wide receiver 23, or like, they're just handing it to you. It's like, how do you not build a roster? And like you said, if you have future capital, and it's not that you have, you didn't trade away your picks to do this. I mean, it used to be people that went all in or win now, quote unquote, they would trade their future picks. So this is the opposite. They would trade their future picks to move up and to consolidate even more of these guys that were declining or in shorter windows, not core guys in terms of market value, whatever. And then they leave the league within 24 months. But getting extra future capital, and now in round 6, 7, 8, 9, that they just hand you auto start players on multi-year windows with historically productive profiles. What are we doing here? Like, I thought last year or the year before was pretty good. It's getting crazy out there. Just handing you. Zeke at 27, too old to do anything anymore.
Right.
AARP. He's been a historic producer for 6 years to start his career.
Right. Can I tell you some of the what I find is so I always get nervous that we are, whether it's us or that we're gonna, the stuff that we say is actually going to influence the market and take some of the edge away.
No one takes that seriously.
Like I get nervous about these sorts of things. So I want our subscribers to benefit and us to benefit for that matter. But you start looking and seeing some of the stuff that people do, and you're like, okay, they're just killing themselves by a different method. Right. Because like some of the stuff that happened, for example, in this draft that I did, someone came up and got, they wanted to take my 6th round pick right at 606, and they gave me a 20th for a future first. They took Terry McLaurin, right? Like then someone else traded up, and actually they traded up to 307. They gave me a future first, and they took Drake London, right? So like it's, those deals are always the best to be on the other side of. Like you always, you never take the bet of like, I'm going to trade up for a wide receiver at the cost of a future first. Like you just never do that. And yet there's still people that will do it. And it's crazy because what's happening is people are trading up to sort of take the young long-term bet and mortgaging future capital to do it. We're moving down the board, getting the productive guys and getting the future insulation. Like it's the best of all the worlds. Like the market's so messed up in Dynasty right now. It's just, you could trade down, get future assets, and get a win now team. It's just ludicrous.
Absolutely. In this episode, we discussed team building. We also talked about those older eroding players, T. Higgins, Laviska Shenault, a bunch of dynasty trades, including future capital, Lamar Jackson, Joe Mixon, Kyle Pitts, the works. And in the beginning, a very good discussion, very good topic from Jordan. It must be June, July. These are the topics we can go into. That week 6, a little bit hard, a little bit tricky. Talking about the best situations for quarterbacks over the next 3 years. That ecosystem for your cornerstone players in premium formats. All right, so that's going to do it. And until next time, good luck in your dynasty leagues.
Hit them with the step back. Free agency's coming up. Showcase your talents.